Hey there! In today's tutorial, I wanted to show you how to create an enemy position indicator in the Godot engine so that the player sees where the enemies are, even when they are off screen. Let's get into it. First, let's think about what we actually want from this system. Basically, we want an arrow on the edge of the screen, always pointing at the enemy whenever we cannot see that enemy on the screen itself. We are going to accomplish this using the raycast. The raycast node can be given a target position, and it finds the closest collision object it intersects. So, this means that we will shoot our raycast from the enemy to the player. The reason for this approach and not vice versa is because if there are multiple enemies off screen, we want arrows pointing at each one of them. We will also create some sort of collision object around the edges of our screen, and once the raycast hits that, we will position our arrow in the point of collision. This sounds good, but there is one big issue. If another collision object moves between the enemy and the edge of the screen, the raycast will detect that one instead. Thankfully, we can easily fix this by using collision layers, specifically putting the raycast and the collision object around our screen on a different layer than the rest of the collision objects in the game. Now, with the theory part done, I'm gonna show you how to implement this in practice. First, I just created a simple 2D game with some movement and a stationary red quote-unquote enemy. Then, I added an area 2D to our camera object, which will be the edge of the screen. I also added all of the necessary collisions for our raycast to detect. I then placed the area 2D on the second collision layer. Next, I will create the position indicator itself. I added a marker 2D, which will be the parent node of the whole system. This way, I could save it as a separate scene and add it to any enemy I'd like. I added the raycast, a visibility notifier, so that the system only works if the enemy is off screen, and a sprite to point towards the enemy. I placed the raycast on the second collision layer as well. In the process function, I set the target position of the raycast to be the player's position. I then set our sprite's position to the collision point, which means that the sprite will be at the first point that our raycast detects a collision at. Another important thing is to set the raycast to collide with areas instead of bodies, since the object which it should collide with, so the edge of the screen, is an area 2D. Now, theoretically it should work, but it doesn't, or at the very least it is doing some weird things. This is because raycasts work with local coordinates, so the target position needs to be relative to the raycast's position. Thankfully, this can be fixed very easily with the toLocal function. I also forgot to set the sprite's global position, which would cause similar issues, but now it should work apart from the sprite's rotation. To fix that, I will move the sprite's pivot point to the front of the sprite, so that it is always 100% on screen, and then I tell it to always look in the direction of the enemy. So there you go, it works. Of course, you can further customize and change this however you want. For example, here I quickly coded it so that the sprite disappears once the enemy is on the screen, but you could add things like the size of the little icon changing based on the distance of the enemy, or different colors for different enemies, and so on. Thanks for watching. I hope this tutorial can be helpful to you in some way. If you liked it, then please like and subscribe, and consider supporting me on Patreon. It helps a ton. Goodbye and take care.